I knew the end was coming the day Linda Murphy walked into my server room wearing a blazer that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, smelling like expensive coffee and unearned confidence. She looked around at my sanctuary, my fortress, the humming heart of a billion-dollar logistics empire, and wrinkled her nose like she'd stepped in something. "It's a bit outdated, isn't it, Ken?" she asked, tapping her designer heels against the raised floor tiles. "We need to pivot toward a more agile, cloud-native infrastructure." I didn't roll my eyes. I've been in this game too long for amateur theatrics. I just took a sip of lukewarm break-room coffee that tasted like battery acid and disappointment. "Linda," I said, keeping my voice as flat as a heart monitor in the morgue. "This room processes 25,000 orders a day. It keeps paychecks flowing to 2,500 families. It doesn't need to be trendy. It needs cooling and electricity." She gave me that condescending smile they teach in MBA programs right after the class on firing people while using words like synergy. That's exactly the legacy mindset we're trying to disrupt, Ken. Grandpa built a solid foundation, sure, but we're building a rocket ship. Great. A rocket ship. The kid couldn't figure out how to connect to the guest Wi-Fi without calling the help desk, and now she was Elon Musk. My name is Kenneth Sullivan, but everyone calls me Ken. I'm 56 years old, and I've been the chief systems engineer at Midwest Logistics for 30 years. Before that, I spent 6 years in the Army Signal Corps, where I learned that when communications fail, people die. Not literally in the logistics business, but the principle holds. When our website crashes at 3 a.m. because some marketing intern uploaded a massive video file, I fix it. When the warehouse scanners stop talking to the inventory database because of a power surge or a squirrel chewing through a fiber line, I fix it. I've been the invisible backbone holding this company together since I got out of the service. The original CEO, Linda's grandfather, Albert Murphy, knew what I was worth. Big Al was a rough-edged guy who started this business with one truck and a mortgage he couldn't afford. He respected competence over credentials, results over rhetoric. Linda was his granddaughter from his daughter's side. Her mother married a Walsh before Linda was born, but she'd grown up hearing Big Al's war stories from the business trenches. 12 years ago, we got hit by a ransomware attack that nearly wiped us off the map. Nasty stuff that locked down everything from payroll to shipping manifests. While the expensive consultants were running around screaming about incident response protocols, I locked the doors, isolated the network, and rebuilt the core infrastructure from backups I kept on actual magnetic tape in a fireproof safe in my garage. I didn't sleep for 72 hours straight. When the dust settled, Big Al called me into his office, poured 2 fingers of bourbon, and asked me what we needed to do so this never happened again. That's when we built the Dead Man's Switch. Think of it as a nuclear football for corporate infrastructure. It's a central control system that ties everything together. Warehouses, billing, customer portal, security cameras, even the coffee machines. But here's the thing Big Al was paranoid about. He was terrified of a hostile takeover or a rogue employee getting control of the kingdom, so he had me code in a specific protocol, a heartbeat system. My master admin account has to check in with the server every 48 hours. If my account is disabled or if I don't log a specific encrypted sequence, the system assumes the worst. It assumes someone has compromised the leadership and initiates safe mode. Safe mode sounds harmless, right? Safe and cozy. Wrong. Safe mode is a scorched earth protocol. It shuts down external traffic, freezes warehouse operations, locks the financial gateways, disables internal communications. It turns the entire digital infrastructure into a brick to prevent data theft or hostile manipulation. It's like pulling the pin on a grenade to save the bunker. Only 2 people could override it, Big Al and me. But Big Al had a stroke 9 months ago. He's alive, recovering slowly in a place with manicured lawns and nurses who speak in hushed tones. And in his absence, the board appointed Linda, his granddaughter, the visionary, the disruptor. Linda didn't know about the Dead Man's Switch. She didn't read the technical documentation. She thought legacy meant worthless. For 5 months, I watched Linda dismantle everything Big Al had built. She fired the warehouse supervisor who knew every driver by name and replaced him with an algorithm that routed trucks into construction zones. She spent $1.8 million on a rebranding campaign that looked like a kindergartner's art project. She hired consultants who used words like ideate and operationalize in actual sentences without irony. And through it all, She kept looking at me like I was a stain on her sleek, modern vision board. I became the no guy. Can we migrate the entire database to this startup cloud service by Friday? No, Linda. That's legally insane and technically suicidal. Can we remove two-factor authentication? It slows down the sales team. No, Linda, unless you want hackers mining cryptocurrency on our payroll servers. She hated it. She hated that I knew where the digital bodies were buried. She hated that the staff respected me. But mostly, she hated that she couldn't just disrupt me away because she didn't understand what I actually did. The warning signs started about 3 weeks ago. Sudden performance review meetings scheduled for Friday afternoons. Passive-aggressive emails where I was copied but not addressed. The new junior systems admin they hired, a kid named Harold Kim who wore skinny jeans and thought Python was just a snake. He kept asking me for my passwords for documentation purposes. I gave Harold the passwords to the printer network. Let him have fun with toner levels and paper jams. One Tuesday afternoon I was eating a sad turkey sandwich at my desk, watching the server load balance perfectly because I had tuned it like a vintage Fender guitar, when HR walked in. Not the friendly HR lady who brings donuts on birthdays. The other one, the Terminator HR woman named Susan Parker, whose smile never reached her eyes like a shark in a pantsuit. "Ken," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Linda would like to see you in the conference room. Bring your laptop." My stomach dropped. I knew this feeling. It's the same feeling you get when your truck starts making that grinding noise on the highway. Something critical was about to break. I looked at my screen. The control dashboard was glowing green, all systems normal, load balancing perfect, network traffic flowing like a well-oiled machine. "Sure, Susan," I said, wiping mustard off my lip. "Let me just secure my station." I walked down the hallway, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry hornets. I passed the break room where I'd celebrated 30 Christmases. I passed the server room door, hearing the familiar whine of the cooling fans that had become my lullabies. I felt like a captain being asked to walk the plank of his own ship. The glass-walled conference room felt like a fishbowl. Linda was sitting at the head of the mahogany table, scrolling through her iPhone. Didn't even look up when I entered. Harold was sitting next to her, looking nervous, sweating through his vintage band t-shirt like he was about to confess to a crime. "Sit down, Ken," Linda said, finally sliding her phone across the table with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never worked a day in her life. I sat. I didn't open my laptop. I just folded my hands on the table. Hands that had typed millions of lines of code. Hands that had physically carried servers up 3 flights of stairs during the flood of 2018. Hands that had kept this company running while others slept. "We're making some structural changes," Linda began, using her serious CEO voice that she'd probably practiced in the mirror. "We feel that the IT department needs fresh energy, a new direction. We appreciate your service, but we feel your skill set is no longer aligned with our strategic vision." "Translation," I said, cutting through the corporate bull like a hot knife through butter. "I'm too old, too expensive, and I tell you no too often." Linda's jaw tightened. Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the flash of anger in her eyes. "This is an at-will employment state, Ken. We don't need to debate semantics. This is a termination effective immediately." Susan slid a thick envelope across the table like she was dealing cards in Vegas. "This outlines your severance package. It's contingent on you signing a non-disclosure agreement and facilitating a complete handover of credentials today." I looked at the envelope. 30 years of my life reduced to a stack of legal papers. Then I looked at Linda. She looked smug, like a cat who'd caught a canary. She thought she had won. She thought she was cutting out a tumor, not realizing she was slicing through the main artery. "Linda," I said quietly, keeping my voice level like I used to do when talking scared soldiers through radio failures in the field. "Does your grandfather know about this? Grandpa is on medical leave," she snapped, her composure cracking slightly. "I am the acting CEO. My decisions are final." "Okay," I said. "But before we do this, there's something you need to know about the infrastructure. There's a protocol." "Save it," Linda interrupted, waving her hand dismissively like she was shooing away a fly. "Harold here is fully certified. He can handle any protocols. We just need the admin credentials to the central server, the control server, the heart of everything." I looked at Harold. The kid looked like he was about to vomit. His face was pale, and I could see sweat beading on his forehead. He knew he wasn't ready. He could barely configure a Wi-Fi router without calling Google for help, let alone manage a nationwide logistics network that processed billions of dollars in transactions. Linda, I tried one more time because I'm a professional and because, despite everything, I genuinely cared about this company and the people who depended on it. The control server isn't just a computer, it's a system. A living, breathing organism. If you remove me without the proper transition sequence, stop. Linda stood up, leaning over the table like a prosecutor going for the kill. Stop trying to make yourself indispensable. You're not. You're an obstruction to progress. You're a relic from my grandfather's era. Hand over the credentials, or we'll contest every penny of that severance package. I stared at her for a long, silent moment. I saw the arrogance of youth mixed with the dangerous ignorance of someone who'd never faced real consequences. The complete lack of respect for the work, for the machine, for the thousands of people whose livelihoods depended on systems she didn't understand and couldn't be bothered to learn. And something inside me clicked. Not a loud snap, but a quiet, metallic sound, like the safety being disengaged on a weapon. Like the moment in the army when you realize the officer giving you orders has no idea what they're doing, but you follow the order anyway because that's what the manual says to do. "All right," I said, my voice calm as a lake before a storm. I opened my laptop. "You want the keys to the kingdom?" "You got them." The login screen appeared. Clean, simple interface. My design from a decade ago. I created a new super user account for Harold, assigning him full administrative privileges. Every checkbox checked, every permission granted. "Here," I said, spinning the laptop around so Harold could see the screen. "Put in your new password." Harold's hands were shaking as he typed. I couldn't see what he entered, but knowing Harold, it was probably something like password 123 or admin. The kind of security that would make any real systems administrator weep. "Now," I said, my fingers dancing across the keyboard with the muscle memory of 3 decades, "I'm transferring root ownership to this account." I typed the command sequence I'd memorized years ago. The screen flashed blue for a moment, then green. "Transfer complete." "Excellent," Linda said, checking her Apple Watch like she had somewhere important to be. "See? Was that so difficult? Progress doesn't have to be painful." "One last thing," I said, closing the laptop with a soft click. "My account. You'll want me to disable it, right? Security policy and all that." "Obviously," Susan said, pulling out her own laptop. "We'll deactivate your credentials immediately after you leave the building. Security policy, standard procedure, by-the-book termination." What they didn't know, what I didn't tell them, was that the Heartbeat script specifically looked for my unique user identification hash. Not my login name, not my password, but a cryptographic signature tied to my personal account that had been woven into the system's DNA over 30 years of careful programming. I didn't tell them that transferring administrative rights was like giving someone the keys to a car without mentioning that the engine would only start for the original owner. I didn't tell them that the moment my account status flipped from active to disabled, a 15-minute countdown timer would begin ticking silently in the background code, invisible and unstoppable. The dead man's switch wasn't just a security feature, it was a loyalty test, and they had just failed it spectacularly. I stood up from the conference table feeling strangely calm. "Well, that's it then." "Please surrender your badge and company phone," Susan said, her voice all business like she was processing a routine equipment return instead of dismantling 30 years of institutional knowledge. I placed them on the mahogany table. My badge, worn smooth at the edges from 3 decades of daily use, the magnetic strip probably swiped 1,000,000 times. My company phone, which had buzzed during every family dinner, every weekend, every vacation for the past 15 years. "Good luck, Linda," I said, meaning it in the most ironic way possible. "You're going to need it." "We'll be fine," she sneered, already turning back to her iPhone. "Don't let the door hit you on the way out." I walked out of the conference room. I walked past my desk without looking back at the personal items I'd accumulated over 3 decades. The coffee mug from the Army reunion, the photo of Ranger, my German Shepherd, the small cactus that had somehow survived on my windowsill since the Clinton administration. I walked out of the building into the bright, harsh afternoon sun. I got into my 2015 Ford F-150, threw the severance package on the passenger seat, and turned the key. The engine rumbled to life, solid and reliable like everything built to last. I checked my watch. 2:25 p.m. The system checks for my heartbeat every 15 minutes on the quarter hour. I had just been walked out. Susan would disable my account the moment I left the parking lot. The countdown had begun, and nobody in that glass building had the slightest idea what was coming. I drove home in silence. No radio, no podcasts, just the hum of the tires on asphalt and the steady beating of my own heart. It's a 35-minute drive from the office park to my place, a small ranch house that smells like dog treats and WD-40. That drive is usually my decompression time. Today it was a countdown timer. When I got home, Ranger greeted me at the door with his usual enthusiasm, tail wagging like he hadn't seen me in years instead of 8 hours. I scratched behind his ears, my hands steady now. I wasn't shaking anymore. The decision was made, the die cast. I wasn't scared for myself. I have savings. I have skills that every company needs. I could be fixing servers for a bank or a hospital by Monday morning. Hell, I could probably make twice what Linda was paying me as a freelance consultant. I was thinking about the people still in that building, the good people who didn't deserve what was about to happen. I sat down at my kitchen table and opened my personal laptop. I couldn't log into the company network anymore. That would be illegal now, unauthorized access. But I could visit the public-facing website. www.midwestlogistics.com loaded normally. The hero banner showed a stock photo of a smiling delivery driver. The Track Your Shipment portal was working fine. It was 3:05 p.m., 10 minutes until the next heartbeat check. I went to the kitchen and opened a beer. Corona with lime, left over from a barbecue that felt like it happened in another lifetime. I don't usually drink in the afternoon, but today was special. Today was the funeral for my career, and I was the only one who knew the corpse was about to sit up and scream. I thought about calling them. The number was right there in my phone. I could text Harold, run, USR, bin, heartbeat, override.sech immediately, or the whole system goes down. But what would happen then? Harold would panic, probably mistype the command, or worse, Linda would see it and claim I was trying to hack their systems. He's attempting unauthorized access. Call the FBI. I put the phone down. They wanted innovation. They wanted to move fast and break things. 3:14 p.m. I refreshed the browser. Still up, still running smooth. 3:15 p.m. I clicked refresh again. The page loaded but slower. The spinning wheel took an extra second. I waited, beer half raised to my lips. 3:16 p.m. I clicked track shipment and entered a random tracking number. The wheel spun, and spun, and spun. Then a generic error message appeared. Service temporarily unavailable. Please try again later. And so it begins. I took a long pull of beer. It tasted like victory with a strong aftertaste of guilt. The silence in my kitchen was profound. But I knew that 20 miles away, inside that glass-walled office building, the silence was about to be shattered by the sound of every phone ringing at once. A system crash doesn't look like it does in the movies. No dramatic sparks flying, no screens going black with electric arcs. In reality, it's much more subtle and infinitely more terrifying. It's the absence of sound where there should be noise. It's stillness where there should be motion. It's the moment when you realize the heartbeat has stopped. I opened another browser tab and navigated to our vendor status portal, a public dashboard we host on completely separate infrastructure to let our biggest clients monitor our service health. Since it runs on an external server, it wasn't affected by the lockdown, but it was reading the internal system status through a secure API. At 3:18 p.m., I watched the status indicators begin their death dance. Warehouse North, operational to degraded. Warehouse South, online to unresponsive. API, gateway, normal to critical. Payment processor, active to timeout. It looked like a Christmas tree catching fire, one light at a time. Here's exactly what was happening inside that rocket ship right now. Protocol Omega, my masterpiece of paranoid programming, operates on a simple principle. Assume breach. Deny everything. The moment it detects that the primary administrator has been compromised, it revokes trust across the entire network. Every digital certificate, every security handshake, every hello, I'm a legitimate system identification gets invalidated instantly. Picture the web server trying to talk to the database to look up a customer order. Database responds, "Who are you? I don't recognize your credentials. Access denied." The web server tries again with the same result. After 3 failed attempts, the web server assumes it's under attack and automatically shuts down to prevent data theft. In the office, this manifested as the internet seems slow today. Linda was probably tapping her Bluetooth mouse, annoyed that her Spotify playlist of motivational TED Talks was buffering. But in the warehouses, that's where the real chaos was erupting. Our facilities are highly automated. Barcode scanners tell workers which bay to store incoming freight. Conveyor systems sort packages by destination. Robotic arms move pallets. When the security certificates were revoked, every smart device in the building suddenly went blind and deaf. Picture Walter Johnson, our head forklift operator. Walt's a solid guy, been with us 18 years, knows the warehouse layout better than his own living room. He scans a pallet of automotive parts bound for Detroit. Usually his scanner beeps cheerfully and displays Base 7, Section C, Shelf 2. Instead, the screen flashed angry red with a message I'd hard-coded into the system a decade ago. System lockdown initiated. Contact primary administrator. Error code. Deadman protocol activated. Walt probably stared at the screen, tapped it a few times, then keyed his radio. Control, this is Walt. My scanner just died. Says something about Deadman protocol. Mine too, came Nancy Torres's voice from the dispatch office. Same here, echoed through the radio from a dozen other voices across 75,000 square feet of warehouse floor. And just like that, the heart of a billion-dollar logistics operation stopped beating. My phone rang at 3:28 p.m. Walt Johnson, calling from his personal cell. I stared at the caller ID for 3 rings before answering. Ken, thank God you picked up. Walt's voice was strained, echoing in what sounded like a very quiet warehouse. Everything's dead down here. Scanners, conveyors, even the damn time clocks. Screens all say Deadman protocol. What the hell is a Deadman protocol? I'm not at work, Walt, I said carefully. I don't work there anymore. Silence. Then, what do you mean you don't work here? I was terminated about an hour ago, effective immediately. Jesus Christ. Who's running it then? Harold, the kid with the vintage t-shirts. Walt's laugh was bitter. We're screwed, aren't we? That Deadman thing, that's your handiwork, isn't it? I can neither confirm nor deny that, Walt. Fair enough. Well, I better go tell the drivers to get comfortable. Looks like we're going to be here a while. While I was having my conversation with Walt, absolute chaos was erupting in the executive wing. I found this out later from Carl Rodriguez, our CFO, who texted me the blow-by-blow account after several whiskeys. Linda was storming through the hallways like a tornado in designer heels. Why is my email down? Why can't I access the financial dashboard? Harold! Harold was in the server room, frantically typing commands he'd Googled 5 minutes earlier. I'm trying. It says authentication failed for everything. Try the master password, Linda demanded. I did. The system doesn't recognize any of my credentials. That's when Carl burst in, holding a printed report. Linda, we have a problem. Our payment processor just went offline. Every credit card transaction is being declined. We've got $2.3 million in orders sitting in limbo. It's just a glitch, Linda said, though sweat was beading on her forehead. Harold will fix it. Carl looked at Harold, who was currently having what appeared to be a panic attack over his keyboard. Where's Ken? Ken is no longer with the organization, Linda said stiffly. You fired Ken? Today? During month-end closing? Carl's voice rose an octave. Do you have any idea what you've done? Meanwhile, I was monitoring the vendor status dashboard like a general watching a battlefield. By 4:00 p.m., every major system was either degraded or completely offline. The phones went next. Our VoIP system runs over the corporate network, and Protocol Omega had severed those connections to prevent data exfiltration. Linda couldn't even call for help. At 4:15 p.m., the really expensive problems started. We handle logistics for 3 major automotive manufacturers. When their shipments don't arrive within a 30-minute window, they impose penalty fees, $50,000 per hour per facility. We service 9 facilities. Do the math. Carl tried calling me at 4:32 p.m., but I let it go to voicemail. His message was short and desperate. Ken, I know what happened. Linda screwed up. The board is freaking out. Please call me back. I didn't call back. Not yet. At 4:45 p.m., the real panic set in. Banks close at 5:00 p.m. If our daily reconciliation files didn't reach First National by closing time, we'd breach our $25 million credit agreement. The bank could call the entire loan. That's when my phone rang with a call I'd been expecting. Ken. Carl's voice was steady, but I could hear the strain underneath. We need to talk. Hello, Carl. How's the rocket ship flying? Cut the crap, Ken. Linda messed up. We all know it. The board's in emergency session. Big Al is demanding answers from his hospital bed. And what answers are you giving him? that his granddaughter just fired the one person who could keep this company running. I took a sip of my second beer. Sounds about right. What's it going to take, Ken? Finally. The right question. I'm not coming back as an employee, Carl. I don't trust the management structure, but I might consider a consulting arrangement. What kind of arrangement? $200 an hour, guaranteed 80 hours per month, paid up front, complete operational autonomy over IT infrastructure. I report directly to the board, not to executive management. Jesus, Ken. That's $16,000 a month, less than you're losing every hour this system stays down. Hold on. He put me on hold. I could picture the frantic conference call happening 20 miles away. Linda arguing, the board members demanding answers. Big Al's voice crackling through a speakerphone from his rehab facility. Carl came back 5 minutes later. Done. We'll email the contract. Not so fast. I also want a formal retraction of my termination stating it was an error in executive judgment. Email to all staff. Linda will never agree to that. Then the system stays down, Carl. You've got 8 minutes before the bank closes. Another hold, shorter this time. Fine. Anything else? My severance package doubled as a consulting bonus. Call it a crisis management fee. Ken. 7 minutes, Carl. Done. Jesus, you're expensive. Cheap compared to bankruptcy. I drove back to the office in the gathering dusk. Linda was waiting by the front door, looking like she'd aged 5 years in 3 hours. Her perfect makeup was smudged, her blazer wrinkled. You enjoyed this, didn't you? She said as she let me in. Linda, I said, walking past her, I tried to warn you. The difference between experience and arrogance is that experience listens. The server room smelled like fear and desperation. Harold looked at me like I was a returning messiah. Ken, oh God, I'm so sorry. I tried everything but nothing works and... I held up a hand. Harold, go get some coffee. This is going to take a while. I sat down at my console. The screen glowed angry red. System lockdown. Administrative override required. I pulled out my RSA token, the same one Linda had called antiquated technology just hours earlier. I pressed my thumb to the biometric scanner. Identity confirmed. Kenneth Sullivan. I typed the master override sequence, a line of poetry Big Al and I had chosen together years ago. A ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are for. The screen flickered. Red became amber, then slowly, beautifully green. System restoration initiated, network connections reestablished, service resuming. Across the city, I knew Walt's scanner was beeping back to life. The conveyor belt started humming, the phones started ringing. The heart of the company began beating again. At 11:47 p.m., I sent the final reconciliation file to the bank. The loan was secure. The company would survive. The next morning, the email went out. From Office of the CEO to all staff. Subject: correction regarding personnel changes. Due to an error in executive decision-making, Kenneth Sullivan's employment termination has been reversed. Ken has returned as senior technical consultant with full operational authority. We apologize for any confusion and reaffirm our commitment to the expertise that keeps us running. Linda was reassigned to strategic planning, a role with no operational authority. Big Al returned from rehab 2 months later and formally promoted me to Chief Technology Officer. And Harold? He's doing fine in his new role managing printer maintenance. Some rockets, it turns out, are built to crash.